connecting with the Global Federation community. And we have partners here, Nicole and Casper, who will be doing the initial presentations once we get into it, about what they do globally with the Identity Federation space. So welcome to the APAN working group. The three presentations, we've got the refit specifications, what's new, which is Nicole, what's new in EduRoam and EduGain, which is Casper, and then I'll finish it out with getting involved with the global identity and access management community. So how to actually connect with folk around the world. But before we get into that, just this one. So, welcome. And that. So the IAM task force, it's a community. Oh, it's going too fast. Why is it racing ahead? Stop that. It's a community of like-minded folk who don't know how to drive presentations. It's a coordination of. It's just going to annoy the. Stop that. It's probably in my pocket. That's what's happening. What's this thing? Right. We all get our head together soon. Didn't even have too many beers last night, so I don't know what the problem is. So we've run a number of projects in the past, starting off with Backfire, which kicked off in Singapore a number of years ago. That then morphed into iFire, where we've been training Identity Federation folk from around the region and building up their Identity Federations, both with EduRoam and traditional Identity Federations, including connecting to EduGain. We then had the iFire X-Man project, which was run by the Malaysian Federation primarily, and they've provided a technology stack which allows Federations operators, your NRENs, to quickly set up an Identity Federation based on a Kubernetes stack, which includes a Federation management tool, a hosted IDP solution, and an option to have a hosted EduRoam solution. And we've done a couple of training sessions on that recently. The community is really about training and knowledge sharing. So we're here to train you. I've been doing this for many years. Nicole and Casper's been doing it for a while. We have Kazu in the room, has been doing it probably longer than I have. So it's about bringing the community together and training and sharing knowledge. And the ultimate aim is to deploy Identity Federations to improve access to services for researchers, staff, and students across your nations. Okay, so I've been working in the industry for many years. Previous to this life, I used to work at the Queensland University of Technology, where I was their lead identity management guy. Been working for the Australian Access Federation, so it's an identity federation specifically for Australia. Been there for 13 years or thereabouts, and actually started that federation with a small team of just 4 of us who kicked that federation off. We're now a team of 26 and doing a whole lot more stuff in the identity space. Until very shortly, I will stop being the EduGain steering group chair, because that whole thing's changing, and I'll be glad to step away from that role. Didn't really do much, but it was good fun. And I'm also the chair of the APAN Identity and Access Management Task Force. So I wear a number of hats. I'd like to just go around the room now and get you to introduce yourselves to everybody else, so everyone knows who's in the room, what sort of who you work for, and what you hope to accomplish or achieve by attending the APAN 56 today. So let's start with Nicole. If you could stand up and introduce yourself.
So hi, Nicole Harris. Hello, I'm Nicole Harris. I'm from Géant. I'm not going to say any more because I'll be introducing myself in my presentation shortly.
My name is Casper Dave, and like Nicole, I'll introduce myself further with my presentation.
Hello, good morning. I'm Maheshana Adibul from National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka. This is my first time with APAN.
Hi, and this is Kaz Yamaz from Japan. So I was launched the Japanese Identity Federation, but now I'm taking care of much more upper layer service for open science and open access, the platforms.
My name is Akinori. This is my first time for APAN. Come from Gakuin in Japan.
Good morning, everyone. I am Sulochalal Amate. I am chair of Nepal, right? I want to know a bit more on this EduGain and what's the progress in it so that we can set up Nepal also.
We're keen to have
We're
the
in
Paul
process
join.
of setting up EduGain. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chaturanga from University of Sri Lanka.
Hi, good morning. I'm Vinu Janan. I'm representative from the Eastern University.
Yeah, good morning to all. I am Saundraj from Eastern University, Satlam.
Good morning to all. I'm Mr. Vibinoharan, representing from University of Vavuniya.
Good morning, everyone. I'm David Teknaga from IAM University of Sri Lanka. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jiang Ningchen from CSTNet, China Science and Technology Network.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Razan from Nepal Resource and Education Networks. Yeah, this is not my first time in Nepal. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. I'm Karma from Bhutan, Group Research and Education Network. This is not my first APAN, but this is my first IAM session I'm attending. Thank you.
Okay. And we have a few folk online, I think. We can get them to introduce themselves. Stop sharing. So if the guys online would like to unmute themselves and turn the videos on and introduce themselves in any order you like. There we are.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Senavi Herat from Learn Lanka Education and Research Network, hosting country.
Okay. David from JUCC. Nope. Abu Nazar. Roland Leon. And Hiroshi. Hiroshu. Okay, there are folk online. I hope they're going to be listening and taking advantage of today's discussions. Go back to sharing slides. Okay. So over the next 3 days, we've got content about connecting with the global community this morning, and then this afternoon or after this morning's event, advanced federation stuff, multi-factor authentication and identity assurance. But given there's some people that are new to the room, I might try and slip in a what is identity federation talk before those two start, so you've got a little bit of context about what identity federations are about. Since we've been doing this for a number of years now, I've decided to step it up a little bit and go to some more advanced topics on identity federation. hoping there'd be more sort of engineers in the room, but given that there are sort of people who want to know about what actually Identity Federation is, I'll go and find some old slides in the break and run through those for you just to give you a feeling for what Identity Federation is. Tomorrow, again, more technical stuff about some advanced identity provider configuration options that will make it easier for folk to connect, and making the most out of Jagger, which is the Federation registry tool, which we've been deploying across the region. So there's some things that I'd like to sort of show that we can actually do with Jagger and managing your federations. On Wednesday, more detailed stuff, looking at entity categories. One of Nicole's favorite topics, REFED's baseline. So that's sort of trying to set a minimum standard globally for participants in identity federations to work better and to ensure that, or to help ensure that researchers don't have any hassles accessing the favorite services they want to access. And then rounding out the week, or the identity management theme, is federation updates. So if you have an update or you want to talk about anything that you're doing in your federation, that's your opportunity to get up here and tell us about what's happening in your space. And I know that the Japanese team have a presentation that they'd like to talk to. Okay, so that's the overview of the next few days. Hopefully we'll get through it without boring you to tears. And that's the end of that slide pack. Hurrah. One down, many to go. So Nicole has sent me her slides. So let's see if I can find them. Out. Download them. Having good fun with this technology today. Yeah, screen presentation. Yeah. I'll let you take over.
It's gone black. Oh well, there we go. We don't need the starting slide. Hello everyone. Good morning. I promised I'd introduce myself a bit more, so I'll do that now. My name's Nicole Harris. I work at Géant alongside my colleague Casper here. I've been at Géant for 10 years now, and previous to that I worked at JISC, the UK Federation, for 10 years. You can all now say, no, you can't possibly be there for 20 years, but I set up the UK Access Management Federation when I was at JISC. And at Géant, I'm responsible for a range of projects and initiatives in the trust, identity and security space. And one of the ones I've been looking after for some time is REFEDs. Some of you may have heard of REFEDs before. For some of you, it might be new. So I thought it would be useful just to give a bit of background about REFEDs before I talk a bit more about the new entity categories we've brought on board and how we want federations to adopt them. So ReFEDS is the Research and Education Federation Group. It was first set up in 2005. I can always remember how old ReFEDS is because ReFEDS is the same age as my son, who's now up here. So we can measure how long ReFEDS has been going by the height of my child. We were set up to provide initially a venue, a talking shop for all the new identity federations that were being set up, where we could talk about our issues and our problems, the same as we do here. But over time, we've built up into an organization that also looks after and curates specifications and processes and documents and useful information for federations. We managed to run for quite a long time without actually having a strategy. We kind of made it up as we went along. But we now have a formalized strategy for the group, and this is our mission. So our mission is to provide an open collaboration hub for stakeholders in the RNE Identity Federation ecosystem to learn, educate, and build standards and best common practice for federations internationally. So our aim is to talk to federations across the globe. It can be sometimes challenging to get out here to see you guys. It's been a few years for me, but we're really happy to be back over in the Asia region. We obviously also work very closely with colleagues in, for example, Africa, through some of our projects and partnerships there, and then close partnerships with Canary and Internet 2 over on the other side of the globe. That lovely picture was taken at TNC in Tallinn, I think, a few years ago. ReFEDS is reasonably unique. We don't have any project funding. We don't get any money from JON Project or from TAIN or anything like that. We're only sponsored via kind donations from some of our NRENs and identity federations. So these are our sponsors for whom we're very, very grateful. Sorry, the logos were a little small on this screen. Can I get it into full screen mode? It would be better, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. That'll be better. Then you guys can see. No, it switched the wrong way. No, it's swapped on my screen rather than your screen. Oh well. Sorry, Terry, I'm having just as many problems with this laptop as you are. So yeah, all of these lovely people give us small amounts of money every year. So we have a very small budget. So we try to really focus the work that we can do within ReFEDS to try and provide the most important services that we can to the global identity federation community. Let's try getting this back. Nope. Not going to work. Just going to try and reshare the screen and see if I can get it the right way around for you guys. Oh dear. No, not going to happen. Okay. Terry, can you have a look at this for me? It's showing correct here. Just cannot get it to show correct there.
Mouse open.
Oh, let's see. Okay, let's keep going. No. Mouse. Oh, you've got your mouse settings the wrong way around, Terry. There we go. Okay. So I mentioned we work with federations across the globe. And every year we do a ReFed survey and try and find out about some of the new federations that have been developing. Quite a few have been coming out of this region. But these are the new federations from the last year or so. I say new because a lot of them have been developing for some time. People have been working on for some time. And we also work closely with EduGain in developing these federations. So as you can see, we have from across the globe, we have eduid.ng in Nigeria. What we're also seeing is more federations that are being set up that represent a region rather than just one specific country. So 2 examples here, we have eduid.africa, which is being developed within Africa as a sort of catch-all federation for African countries. And then FEEL in Latin America is doing a similar thing. This is becoming more and more common, we're seeing. We're still doing work within Europe and the European adjacent regions and seeing some federations, for example, like Lebanon, Azerbaijan are developing out there as we stretch outside the typical Western European countries. More work in Africa with, and then we also have TigerFed from Bangladesh. I know a lot of work went on to support them within this region. So lots and lots of new developments, lots and lots of changes. We think we're tracking about 96 federations globally now, which is a huge number of federations to be working with. So what does ReFeds do specifically? Well, as I say, we have a fancy strategy now. So we actually have objectives, and we have 3 main objectives. The first one is to empower our community. And we want to do that by working on open collaboration and building interoperability and trust. That trust word is the most important for us. We work within trust frameworks. We need to be able to trust each other so that we can globally share and trust in the metadata, which is the core of our services. So that's our main focus. We then like to support and educate our members. That can be through attending meetings like this to share knowledge. It can be through our working groups. It can be through encouraging peer support, all you guys being in the same room together. And then the final point, which has become one of the main things we do, and what I'll talk about a bit more as well today, is we curate, develop, and maintain standards and specifications for federations. And we've been shifting our focus more and more towards that. If we're going to establish and maintain a standard, someone needs to be the keeper of that standard and make sure it's up to date, it's available all the time, that it's well maintained, that it's reviewed. So ReFeds has been really focusing on being the home for those standards so that you can use them and be sure that they'll be looked after in the long run. A few more things that we're looking at. So we provide a bunch of supporting documentation. We have some federation best practice templates. Some of those are a little old. We're doing some updates and refresh of those at the moment as we speak. My colleague Heather Flanagan, who's the other ReFeds coordinator, is doing a lot of work there. We want to unlock attributes. One of the main reasons we have identity federations is so that we can securely and safely exchange information about our users. But we need to be able to actually exchange that information. And we find that a lot of our identity providers, our organizations are worried and concerned about releasing data about their students or their staff or their other users. And they want a secure and a safe way to release that information and to be sure that it's well maintained and looked after and secure. And entity categories is one of the main ways we do that. We provide a template and a structure which says you can be sure that if you're sharing this amount of data with this service provider, it's safe, it's secure, it meets best practice. And then, of course, we enable community because that's what we're all about. So what are these entity categories that I've been talking about? We have a few of them, not too many, because if we have 40, 50 entity categories. No one's going to know what they're using, what they're for, and why we're using them. They're a very, very simple process, short document that says, in these circumstances, if I signal this in my metadata, I will release this information to you. So in most of the entity categories, a service provider will say, I meet this specific standard, I meet RNS, or I meet blah. And then an identity provider goes, okay, if you flag that, I will then release X to you. So that's one of the main processes we have for entity categories. And then we have some other services and specifications which help support that. I'm not going to go into baseline expectations and assurance in detail. I'll talk about them briefly, but Terry is going to talk about them more later in the week. One of the very first entity categories that ReFeds developed was the research and scholarship entity category. A long time ago, when we first started off identity federations and we developed our technology stacks, we had our metadata moving, we started seeing very early on the problem that identity providers were reluctant to release user attributes, even if it was just name, email address, very basic information. There was a reluctance. So we started talking to them and said, okay, why? What can we do to help support you? What can we do to make it easier? And they were just, most of them said, I'm just the techie guy. I'm just the administrator. I can't make decisions about releasing user information. So we sat down and thought about it and said, okay, well, what if I could tell you that this service provider came from a trusted environment? And not only do they say, okay, they're from a trusted environment and they need these attributes, but they also make a set of promises that they will look after this data properly. Would you then be able to release the attributes? And that seemed to be a good way forward. I'll talk in a little bit about why it turned out maybe not to be the best way forward, but that was the basic idea. So we had the research and scholarship entity category. Only services that can prove that they provide services to and for education and research can be in that category. They go through the specification, they make some commitments. And the other thing we added in was the federation operator has to say, we agree. You can't just add this tag to your metadata. The federation operator has to do it. And they have to say, we've checked out this service provider. We believe the claims they're making. This is a good guy. Then the idea is the identity providers can trust that. We also had, most of the entity categories came out of problems we found as we went along. So the next problem we came across was, sometimes I want to have a test IDP, but I want to test in a live environment. So I can do little tests in little sandbox, but I can't really test with the wide community if I can't put it in a live environment. But then I don't want my users clicking on Géant test IDP. I don't want them to see that. I just want to be able to do it myself and for them not to see it. So then we developed the hide from discovery entity category. And that's a simple way that IDPs only can tag their IDP and say, don't show this in your discovery screen. So when you go to your search menu and you're trying to find your university, those shouldn't appear if you have hide from discovery. Then we got a little bit more advanced and we started thinking about, this whole MFA stuff is becoming popular. Wouldn't it be good if there was an easy way to flag that in our exchanges? So not only did we develop a multi-factor authentication tag, which is just a simple way to say, we use multi-factor with this IDP. We also have the converse. We decided it was useful to be able to say when we're not doing that specifically. So people didn't just assume if you had MFA, if you didn't have the MFA tag, you weren't doing it. So you can actively declare that you just do single factor authentication too. I mentioned at the beginning that I don't just do identity and trust, I do security work as well. And as federations became more mature, they've really become critical infrastructure for those running them. For those, I don't know, Terry, Kaz, people who've had identity federations running for a while and you're using your identity provider, if you cannot access your identity provider now, it makes life very, very difficult. If the Géant identity provider is not up, I can't access our wikis, our websites, pretty much everything just stops. So being able to handle security incidents and handle them well became really, really important for us. But again, we were like, okay, well, if we're going to work together to investigate and explore security incidents, we really need a process for doing that. Otherwise, people are just going to be sharing data that might be sensitive or reveal issues all over the place. So that's where Certify and the security contact came in. So Certify is, again, a framework. It's a bunch of things that you say, yep, we do that. So if you're working with us, we promise you that we'll do that and we'll follow this process. And the security contact was very, very simply, in metadata, we have technical contacts, admin contacts. We never had a security contact. So that's a place you can just flag your security contact. Error handling, I think, speaks for itself. It's just a specification which says, if something does go wrong, this is how we deal with it. And we deal with it in an elegant way. So the user just doesn't get a 404 page. They get some decent information behind it. Then we have baseline expectations. This came about because, as I said, we have 96 identity federations globally, some very mature, some not. And if we compare it to, say, EduRoam, where we have even more participants, EduRoam is one service, one process. And we did a really good job of making sure that everyone who does EduRoam does it in exactly the same way. There's still some things that go wrong and some people do things slightly differently, but it was very easy to say we will do everything in exactly the same way. When identity federations came about, because we have, I think, 9,000 identity providers and service providers, something like that in EduGain now, and 96 federations, people developed slightly different practices. They were like, I have to deal with my members in this way and all these services in this way. And each federation would do things a little bit differently. And over time, that became difficult for the service providers, right? They didn't understand. They were like, I'm working with the UK Federation and they do things this way. But then I go to Finland and they say, no, 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 we want it like this. And then I go to Ireland and they say, yeah, but we need it like this. And that's the kind of stuff which isn't helpful. We want to encourage participation. So baseline expectations is trying to say to people, okay, let's review that. Let's try and have the same level, at least the same basic level. So when a service provider comes to us, they get the same experience as much as possible across the federations. The assurance framework was developed to do exactly what it says on the tin. We decided we wanted higher levels of assurance in our federation. So you could, place different levels of trust in different services and different identity providers. And that's exactly what that does. Again, we'll talk about that in a lot more detail this week. And finally, the code of conduct, which gets right back really to what I was talking about at the beginning. The code of conduct was developed to help us meet our data protection obligations. It was simply a way of saying, I'm a good, not citizen, we're good service providers when it comes to looking after data. We follow, in this instance, in the first one, the Data Protection Directive, as it was at the time in Europe. And you can trust us with your data because we have some specific things, one of those being a link to a privacy notice, for example. So all of them do slightly different things, but all with the same intentions. It's normally a short document with some obligations in. By putting this tag in your metadata, you say, I meet all of these obligations. Trust me. Trust is good. A lot of these were developed some time ago, and we realized a bit that we've made some mistakes in some of them, or things need to be updated, renewed, and refreshed. So there's been a couple of changes, and this is the main point of this talk. All of that was kind of introduction to tell you about some changes we've made recently. So one change is we've introduced a new version of Certify, the security incident response framework that we have. It's not a massive change. The second one is actually quite a funny thing that we realized later on. There were a bunch of editorial changes. When you first do a specification, you can consult on it, you can read it, you can put it out for as long as you want, but things come out as people try and use it. So there were some questions that came out. So we just cleaned those up a bit, made some things cleaner. The only thing that's new in Certify 2 is we added a new assertion that requires security contacts participating in Certify to be notified about security incidents. That kind of seems obvious, right? If you have a framework on incident response that you should actually have to communicate. But as we put this out, people were saying, well, it doesn't actually say I have to do that. So we put that in. Both versions are still valid. We think that will be the case for some time now. But this new version just makes it absolutely explicit that if someone's participating, there's an expectation of communication. The second one we've updated was the code of conduct. Obviously, we needed to update that in Europe because we had GDPR. We went from a directive to a regulation. We also had an interesting thing within GDPR in Europe. There's now official codes of conduct. So you can go to the European Data Protection Board, say, I want to be ratified. I want my code of conduct ratified. We tried for 5 years to get this ratified, completely failed. We don't think it's possible to get something ratified by the European Data Protection Board, but never mind, we have it, it's a guideline. You might be saying, irrelevant for us, it's just GDPR, but we actually think that it's a really good basis for data protection standards globally. It's based around the 7 common principles for data protection. Sorry, again, they're a bit small on this screen, but I can share the slides so you can see them later. But really, basic standard data protection principles that have been around way longer than GDPR, way longer than most people's policies. Things like do it lawfully, do it fairly, and make sure it's transparent, make sure it's accurate, make sure there's accountability, make sure things are accurate. Think about security, think about storage, and think about data minimization. So all of our entity categories, big box on tick on data minimization, because they really focus on you can only release a limited amount of entity categories. So that's the change there. It's a slightly longer document, but the main body is really just the first page. The rest is all explanatory text and supporting material. And our biggest change recently has been our main way of encouraging people to release attributes. Previously was research and scholarship that I explained at the beginning. Research and scholarship to us 10 years ago seemed like a great idea. It seemed like the best way to do it. Of course, we trust people and we have trust with them because they're in our community. Turns out that's actually really not a good argument. You might trust someone because they're in the same community as you, but that's not how you make a decision about whether you release personal data to them. You release personal data to them because they need it and they have a proven need for it. And whether they are offering you, a learning portal or a commercial service, it doesn't matter. The basis of the decision as to whether you're releasing attributes should actually be on, is there a proven need for this? And will they also look after it in a good way? So we've made a shift away from R and S and have introduced these 3 tiers of attribute release processes. We're actually hoping to introduce these into Edugain as a standard within Edugain as we move forward. And we would expect every entity in Edugain to at least comply to anonymous. Again, trying to get to that standard baseline within Edugain so everyone's doing the same thing. But that's work in progress. And I think these new categories are very, very simple and very, very clear. We think that for most transactions within identity federations and Edugain, these 3 things will cover 95% of your use cases. Then there's the 5% that need more detailed information, lots of more attributes. We can deal with those separately. But if we can get 95% of transactions in Edugain aligned to these, we're going to make life a lot easier for a lot of people. So we have anonymous access, which basically says, this is a person, maybe, and they're accessing your service, but I'm telling you nothing about them. It's just a blob coming in. Accept it or not. Do not make any authorizations decisions based on this coming in. There's no information there. You can just assume that they are some kind of user that's in our system in some kind of way. Then we have pseudonymous access. And this is, again, all you're providing is a pseudonymous user identifier. And that's saying, okay, this is a person coming in, and there will be, you'll have an identifier, so you know it's the same person every time. But you're not going to know that they're Nicole or Terry or Casper. It's just the same person coming in. And then the final one is personalized access, which is like, okay, you would like to actually know it's me. So you can make things a bit nicer. You can send me emails about stuff. You can use my name in displays, etc., that kind of thing. And you can have a bit more of a relationship with me. But it's still very basic information, name, email address. There's nothing else in there. These might seem like really low goals, but actually it's been getting this information flowing has been really, really hard. So this is the way we're going to move. And as I say, the ambition is to then get Edugain to support these and require that every entity within Edugain is at least tagged with anonymous. The best option would be we'd have everything up to at least supporting personalized, which is still very small amount of data, but that will take some time. So where are we? This is just some interesting stats. I won't read all of them, but they're in the slides, which we can share if you want to read. We've been tracking adoption of our specifications for a long time. And when I say our ambitions are low, you can see that even RNS, which has been around since 2016, service providers, obviously with RNS, we don't want to be above 10%. That sounds about right. But we only have 34% of identity providers in Edugain supporting RNS right now. The good news is that if we keep on this trajectory, by 2036, we should have everybody. But yeah, we're not quite getting there with supporting our organizations in adopting it. So we need to do a bit more work still. And then these are the numbers for code of conduct. As you can see, the new code of conduct, hardly anyone's adopted yet. We need to do a lot more work. Once people have settled into something, they don't really move forward. And then I have the same stats for Certify. Certify on the service provider front, we've been pretty successful on. We need to still make the switch across to 2, but that's work in progress. But 50% of service providers support Certify because they can see it's a good thing, right? They want to be involved in security incident response. They want people to trust them when it comes to dealing with security incidents. A little bit low on identity providers still. This is why that link to Edugain is so important. We need to give people more reason to adopt. And if we can solidify it and make it a standard within the Edugain service, there's a new requirement which will make life easier for us. So that's all I wanted to talk about. We're going to be here all of today and later in the week. So Terry, if something comes up, I'm happy to share some more information as it comes up. But if you want to know more about refeds, there's our wiki, which is wiki.refeds.org, easy to remember. Our website, which has all of the pointers for all of our specifications on it. And more importantly, please join our mailing list. That's where it's not massively busy, but that's what all the Federation operators are discussing. We have service providers, we have research communities on there, and it's a really, really good place, and we'd love to have people more involved. And thank you very much.
Oh, of course. Oh, silly thing again. Where?
The excitement.
Oh, okay.
Great. And I can see my notes. That's great. Well, thank you for having me today. It's also my first APAN. My name is Casper Dreef. As said, I'm basically the mini version of Nicole. I work for her in our fantastic team of two. And where Nicole focuses a little bit more on refeds, my focus is a little bit more on EduGain and EduRoam. And today I want to tell you about what's new in EduRoam and EduGain. So my agenda for today, I'll first briefly talk about EduRoam and then put a little bit more emphasis on EduGain because there are a lot more things going on there at the moment. But first, I think most of you are familiar with the EduRoam service, the federated roaming service. It's been around for about 15, 20 years now. I remember when I was a student, when I walked into my university's library and the librarian said, well, we have EduRoam now, you can use it. And I thought it was fantastic. And little did I know that a couple of years later, I would be the secretary for the Global EduRoam Governance Committee. So it has been around for quite some time. That also means that the compliance statement for EduRoam has been around for quite some time. And the last time it was updated was in December 2016. So that means that it was due for a revision. Most of the technology described in the compliance statement back then is now outdated. Also, the compliance statement was a little bit too, let's say, firm to solid. So making changes was not really easy to do. It was not really agile. And the letterhead still said, Terena, that organization doesn't exist anymore. So it now says Giant, as it should. So what changed? The biggest change is basically that we moved all the stuff on administrative and technology compliance to an appendix and updated all the administrative and technology compliance stuff to the current standards. And the benefit of this is that it's now much easier to make changes in the future. We don't have to change the compliance statement itself that much. Which is a much harder process because you need much more buy-in. We're a little bit more flexible now. So if a new technology happens, it's easier to make these changes. But by making all these changes to the compliance statement, that means that we also have to do a re-signing of the compliance statement. So that will be the big chunk of work for the next coming months, maybe even a year. We will send out the renewed compliance statement out to all the national roaming operators out there to, well, re-sign it. This will be done digitally this time because we also move along with time and technology. And there is an extra benefit for that we have everything confirmed again and that we have a good database on who is who and who signed to and who is on board. For the national roaming operators in the room, don't worry, this will take some time. We'll have some change over time. So this will happen in the coming year. Then a little bit about the governance of EduRoam. As said, the highest governing body of EduRoam is the Global EduRoam Governance Committee, which is based on regional representation. Here you can see the current representatives in the committee. At the moment, the term has ended, so we are looking for new members, although I can say that the representation in the Asia Pacific region has been great, lots of involvement. But if you want to be involved a little bit more, reach out to your current representatives. So we have the Global Azure Roam Governance Committee on the one side, and the service owner, who is now Paul Dekkers, who works for SURF, and who is also in the GEGC himself as a chair. He is the service owner, and he is the service ownership is tied to the GEON project, and that is to make sure that everything on the technology side is running correctly. So that is actually everything about Azure Roam. Not many changes, as said, but a little bit more changes are happening at the moment in EduGain. So for those who don't know, EduGain is the interfederation service that connects identity federations around the world, simplifying access to content, services, resources for the global research and EduGain community. A little bit of background. EduGain has many different stakeholders. Nicole already talked about refeds. You will hear more about refeds in the coming over the coming days. But there are more stakeholders. ARC, FIM4R, that are the research institutions, and the Cantera initiative are not a member of EduGain, but have a big influence on the service because they contribute to mostly on the technology side. And on the other hand, we have our EduGain members, 80 federations at the moment. They represent a big bunch of identity providers and service providers. And this number is ever growing, which is great. You can also see that the number of federations in EduGain is slightly lower than the number of federations represented in refeds. Also, if you are a little bit more familiar with the numbers on the identity provider and service provider side, there are many more identity providers and service providers inside the federations, but not everyone, not all of those opt in on getting pushed into EduGain. So they only operate on a national level. Running EduGain on a governance level worked pretty well when the service was much smaller and we had much less members, but it grew organically over the years, and I think we had 20 to 25 new federations over the last 3-4 years, which is quite impressive. But it also means that what worked well when the EduGain service was made up out of 25 to 50 federations, it doesn't really work well with 80 members or more, because we will hopefully have much more federations in the future. So we had to do some changes, and we had a fantastic working group, which is technically still running and will probably be running for some more time. It has been active since November 21. The Futures Working Group, and they set 4 goals. That's to review the refeds baseline expectations document. Nicole already mentioned the baseline expectations work, and make proposals to EduGain to support the baseline. Second goal is to identify key issues with current EduGain service provision and to make recommendations for improvement. This is more about supporting mechanisms for RNS, GOCO, entity categories, adopting OIDC in the future. And this will be the bulk of the work. But then you can't make much changes if we have to work with our current governance model. So that's why we have been focusing on point 3 lately to make sure that we are more flexible in the future. So we have reviewed our governance model and made recommendations for improvements. And the 4th goal is just to keep in the back of our mind that we have other working groups and other stakeholders in EduGain, such as FIM4R, such as REFET, such as the ARC project, and make sure that the work we do is in line with the work they do, so we don't go in all these different directions. So yes, we focused on goal 3 first, and the first outcomes are already here, and I'll talk about that for the remaining presentation. So policy changes. The last revision was in early 2017, so also a bit old, also good to review your policies every once in a while and see if they are still up to date, and it was a bit outdated. But the biggest change on the governance side is that we changed the structure. So instead of the current steering group, which consists of all federations, we now split it in 2. We will have a EduGain assembly, and we will have a steering committee, a smaller steering committee. Later, more on that. We have redefined the role of the secretariat. Currently, that is myself and Nicole. The service team and the service owner. These are appointed by the GÉANT project and funded by the GÉANT project, and they make sure that the service is operated smoothly. And the other big change is that we've updated the joining process, and also the way that we handle the way how you participate in EduGain, but also if you want to leave EduGain, which has never happened, luckily. But it's always good to keep that in mind. So we have and this all happened in the in the EduGain Constitution. We also have the EduGain Declaration. No changes there. We reviewed the document, but we found out that it was not needed to make any changes at this point in time. However, we have to re-sign the declaration as well. This will be similar process as the EduRoam compliance statement. And the reason why we want to do this in this case is that we want to raise awareness about all these changes in the policy, in the policies and in the governance structure changes. And what we also like to do is to create a more solid federation management database so that we know who are we talking with and talking to. So what changed on a governance level? So as said, we used to have, or we still have, a steering group that will change into a steering committee and a EduGain assembly. First, the steering group. This is new. So we created also a terms of reference for the steering committee. The committee will consist of 6 members plus an ex officio role for the service owner, who is Davide Vaghetti from GAR. And I also have to thank him for lending some of his slides. So with this, thank you, Davide. And in the new steering committee, there will be 4 seats reserved for the federation representatives. And because we want a more direct relationship with our stakeholders, 2 seats are reserved for the wider EduGain community. So think of representative of service providers, the research community, etc. So we have a little bit more direct influence of those groups, and that we to make sure that what we want to change is also in line with what they would like to see happening. The steering committee will be responsible for reviewing membership of new federations. Now this is mostly done by the secretariat, and then the entire steering group has to review the documents and vote on them. The voting, that will stay the same, but the reviewing process was a bit too slow. So with giving this role and this responsibility to a smaller governing body, we hope to make it a little bit more flexible, a little bit faster, so new federations can join edugain quicker, easier, and with more seamless entry into the service. It will also be responsible for approving and supporting and chairing edugain working groups. The working groups in edugain are relatively new. We, as said, have the futures working group. We also now have the security working group, which works a lot with Certify as well. So here you can see the crossover with the Certify work in refats again. And the big outcome of the security working group now is that there is actually a edugain CCERT team nowadays. So it's really good. I foresee that in the future there will be working groups on technology, on communication, on strategy for edugain, and more. So there's a lot of things going on, and a lot of things will happen in the near future. And which is very important, the last point on the slide is that the steering committee is also responsible for supporting the edugain assembly. And the assembly is a bit similar as the current steering group. So it consists of member federation delegates and deputies. They have an oversight role on the service, on all the changes. They have to approve everything that the steering committee proposes, or the bigger changes. So if there will be changes to the declaration or the constitution in the future, it has to run through the assembly first. They will also have a vote on membership of new candidates. So that will not change. And they also elect the steering committee. They will meet once a year. That brings me to my final and probably most important point of this presentation. This is the call for action. So I would really like to ask you to put yourself up for election for the steering committee, get really involved in the General Assembly. There are mailing lists, there are working groups in the future that you can join and work actively on improving the edugain service. Because I think many people will see edugain is a technology service and it runs on technology. I think the service actually runs on trust on an individual level, on an organizational level, and it also runs on collaboration. So kindly like to ask you to step up and collaborate and make this service a better service and a future-proof service. And then my final slide, if you're not in eduroam or edugain yet, you can contact me. I'm the secretary for both services. And I also added some additional email addresses of the service owners and the business developers who are happy to help you getting into eduroam and edugain. For the slides that will be shared, I will add an extra slide with the links to the new policies. And I think that's it for now. So if you have any questions, you can ask them now, or later this week I'll be around. So thank you. That's fine.
Okay, back to this one. Yep. So before I go on, at morning tea, which is about 20 minutes away, I've tried to organise, or hopefully organise, the photographer take a group photo of us, and I'm hoping to do it next to the car outside. So we'll all crowd around the car and get a nice group shot of the identity crowd who's at APAN. So I just want to hang around a few minutes after before the break, or at the break time, we'll jump in and do that. So our next talk is from myself, and let's see. Involved. Well, we got some question from chat. So we've got a hello from Nafu from BD Ren. So he's watching us online. Hello, Nafu, if you're still there. Okay, sharing. Happening, I hope. Here we go. So this has just taken Casper's call to action further about getting involved in the global identity and access management communities. And there's a number out there. And so that's the topic. So in our region, we have around 4.3 billion people, or around 60% of the global population in the Asia Pacific region. We have nowhere near that sort of representation on any of the EduGain or ReFed steering groups or working parties or anything. So we want to try and change that. So just locally within the APAN region, we have these conferences every 6 months, and they're a great opportunity to meet face-to-face as we're doing today. We've run training of identity federations. We've had 3 funded activities, Backfire, iFire, and iFire X-Man. And in those activities, we've actually had funding to bring people from the region to APAN. We're trying to get some more funding to make that happen, but it's never an easy challenge to find funding to bring people, to fly them in, to pay for their accommodation and their conference fee. So we're hoping more and more federation operators will actually find that budget themselves to send their technical people to these conferences to learn how to do federation properly and a best practice way, and to meet your colleagues from other federations and to share your knowledge and your experiences. So what we're actually trying to do in the future is get more and more technical people to these conferences to make it valuable to have them and to grow the federations. Let's see. So one of the questions I've got about what we're doing at APANs is, are they valuable for providing training? And they are, but do we want more or less training at these things? Or do we want more presentations about what the exciting activities that are happening in each federation are occurring, and sharing that knowledge? We've done something with this particular service that might be really useful for your federation. Having those opportunities to share that sort of information at these things. Have updates from working groups. So we've had a couple of updates from Nicole and Casper about what's happening in the global community. Are we going to start setting up our own local working groups to work on particular aspects that affect our region, and then have those report back to this community? And have visitors from the greater federation community. So it's, again, Casper and Nicole are visiting us this time. In Nepal, we had Pal from, where's Pal from? Sunet. He came and talked to us about some of the ND categories stuff in more detail, and also the seamless access initiative. And we had one of his people zoom into that meeting and talk about the seamless access initiative. So I really want to know what you guys want and what the federation operators in the region want to get out of APAN into the future, because it's going to change. We haven't got the funding resources we've had in the past. We've got to make it valuable for you to send your people to these events, and we need to know what is of value to you guys. We're also looking at trying to expand just beyond the APAN community, because it's just a subset of the Asia Pacific. Oh, hello, we got a comment. Sorry?
So the sharing screen is something like that, I guess. So that's why you cannot see that.
All right, okay. So, need our technical man to come forward. Oh, right.
Would you please stop the screen sharing and start again? This sometimes solves this issue.
Stop sharing.
Send the live feed.
Sorry?
And we are send the live feed, so you are not sharing.
Oh.
Not till it says Terry Smith has started screen sharing, but oh, okay, it's coming now. Yes, it's available. Thank you.
Okay. Back to where we're at. Wait. Okay, so yes, so we really need to know what you want, and after the event, I'll try and work out some way to garner your ideas, your thoughts about what you want. You can also send me an email directly, or send an email to one of the lists that we have, or share your thoughts on the Slack channels that I'll be introducing shortly. Okay, next slide. So we have in the unmute in the APAN region a number of options for sharing. We've got our T-IAM@apan.net email group, and that's really there for notifications. It could be used for more, but at the moment I just usually send out notifications about APAN meetings, ask people to if they want to present at these meetings. But it's an open group, anyone can join and you can send stuff to it. So I'd like to see more use of that if possible. We also have a Slack channel, and that's for discussions and asking questions. I'll put a tiny URL up there, so it's not this big long URL. If you click on that, it will add you to the Slack channel. We have a number of channels within there for various topics. And I occasionally get asked questions directly from Federation operators about how to do X or Y or Z, and I'm happy to share my knowledge, but also it's an opportunity for others to share their knowledge. So feel free to use that as much as possible. There is the APAN website. We have an IAM task force page on there, but sadly it's not very well maintained. It's very out of date, so this needs to be some effort to update that, or to move to some sort of wiki, or just take advantage of the Edugain Refeds wiki that is much better maintained than we have. So we may just make that more pointed to other content. And another question: do we need more ways to communicate within the Asia Pacific region? Particularly for those who aren't part of APAN. So a lot of the Pacific nations aren't part of APAN, and not all of the Asia nations are in the APAN community. So beyond APAN, we've got Refeds, which we've talked about. So who remembers what Refeds stands for? Who isn't part of Refeds? Anyone want to offer a guess of what Refeds nope. Okay. See, Research and Education Federations Group. I didn't know who they were before I started working for APAN, so for the AF. They've got a website. They also have a list of all the federations that they're aware of, and as Nicole said, there's 90 of them. And being part of the community is having your federation listed on the ReFed site. There's a link to that site, and it contains information about your basic information about your federation. It's got a link to the metadata, it's got a link to the contact information, and it's got your name and some other stuff. It's pretty much worthwhile just going in at least once a year to check that your information is current and up to date. You guys pressure people to do that?
We do. Yeah, it's a little outdated as well.
Yeah. So if when you get back to your rooms, your laptops today, jump on the site and make sure your data's, your information's up to date. And if it's not, find Nicole and she can update it immediately. I hope. That would be great. Is this one off or? Oh no, sorry. After being tagged on the global federation map, your federation is listed and the details are updated. So there is a map they've got of all the federations, and you can actually use that to zoom in to see your federation. I've zoomed into the Asia sort of region, and you can see in the middle here, and I'm not sure how current this is, but there's a great chunk of space that's still grey in this area. There's a lot of smaller nations that are still to identify themselves as running a national identity federation. And in the Pacific, can't really see it much, but there's not much happening in the Pacific, from Papua New Guinea, Timor-Leste, and the smaller nations of the Pacific don't have any federations at the moment. And that's something we're trying to work on to get some funding to bring those people up to speed with identity federations. Because all researchers should have the opportunity to access services that are made available to them. So getting involved in ReFeds, there's a couple of meetings I have at least twice a year. On their website, they have these meetings listed. They usually have them in either Europe or the US. The European one is generally tied to the TNC meeting. And within the US, it's tied to TechX. But on occasions, they do come down here and have APAN meetings, have the ReFeds meetings as part of the APAN meeting. So we've done that about twice now, I think. And it's great to have you down for those meetings and to get totally involved. There are community chats. There's a community chat list. Regular community chat sessions on topics of interest to the ReFeds community. And that's something that Heather is running. So they get experts from various federations talking about things that are of interest to them and that may be of interest to other federations. They've recently had a series on running a hub and spoke federation as compared to the mesh federations that we've been training folk here. It's interesting. And there are other topics that have been discussed at these community chats. Timeframes are generally an issue. I generally, if I want to watch, have to get up around midnight to watch these things live, but they're all recorded, so I can actually sleep in and watch them the following day, the following week. And I have been doing that recently. The mailing lists, Nicole's mentioned there's plenty of mailing lists available. Some are open lists and some are closed. There's the ReFeds list to discuss interoperability of federations and related issues for representatives of existing federations and projects. There's a Federation Operators Group. Now, this one's a closed list, but it's fairly easy to join as long as you know a couple of folk on that list. And when you do join that list, a call will go out to the current members to say, does anyone know these people? Are they part of the Federation Operators, or are they Federation Operators or aligned with that group? There are many other lists that you can choose from, and you can generally log in with your Google ID if you don't have an identity federation, but it's probably preferable to have an identity provider in Edugain to use that to log in. Join a working group. They're always fun. They keep you up at night or early in the morning. The they come up, new ones come up from time to time, and Casper's already mentioned a couple of things that he's thinking about with regards to working groups. And ReFeds support these activities. There are a small number of working groups that are aimed at either supporting dialogue amongst small subsets of people or to address specific goals. And as we found out this morning, there are a number of goals that still need to be addressed. So there's plenty of opportunity. Being involved is very rewarding, and you get your voice heard in the global community. And I think we need more voices from our region to help guide ReFeds in what we want as a community to make it go forward for our own benefit as well as the global benefit. There's a ReFeds working plan. That's still a thing, is it? Yep. So there's a plan, a yearly plan. It's on an annual planning cycle. Meaning goals for the year are normally short-term and medium priority. Every December, ideas are for the following year's working plan crowdsourced and discussed at the ReFeds meetings. The working plan is then ratified by both the ReFeds Steering Committee and the ReFeds Sponsors Group. Now, I believe we have a person from Australia who's on the ReFeds Steering Committee, so we have a bit of a voice in that space. And there's always opportunity for you guys to provide your thoughts to the working plan through when these calls are made out. And I generally forward these calls on to the task force IAM group for you guys to see those calls for ideas for the working plan. Edugain has a very active Slack. There's over 570 members in their Slack channel. It looks like you need to be invited to join. Is that correct?
Not per se. There's slides that I will share for sharing this. I don't know, add a link to.
Yeah, I just couldn't find it when I tried to.
Otherwise,
Yeah. So there obviously no need to be invited. You can join through Casper's magic link when we have it. Federation operators, delegates and deputies are generally automatically added to the Slack. So as your federation joins, you'll at least get 2 people automatically added to those Slack channels. And there's lots of topics and discussions that occur on these channels. It's a very active Slack group. Edugain and ReFeds Town Hall meeting. There's one coming up this year on the 10th and 11th of October in Stockholm in Sweden. This is where there'll be this change that Casper was talking about from the old model of a steering group into the smaller steering committee. If you can get there, it would probably be worth your while, but it's a big challenge for us to get to the other side of the world to participate in these things. Will there be any video option for that? Yeah, because it's 2 days. It's a big challenge to sit there for 2 days from midnight to there. So there's the new format coming, opportunities to get involved as in the Asia Pacific representative. So I assume the voting process will be a global call beyond just the people at the meeting.
Yes, absolutely. So the vote is going to go out.
Can we get the microphone for this piece? Sorry.
Yeah, because as Casper mentioned, we are encouraging people who are not just federation operators to be part of the group. So we're going to send out the nominations to as many groups as possible. So this group will be one, ReFeds, some of the research and engagement groups, FIM for R and for L, those kind of things too. So we're trying to get it as far as possible.
Okay, thank you. Edugain also has a wiki. There's lots of useful information available on that wiki. Going beyond just the communities, Shibboleth is some of the software that's very popular in use for federations. They have a couple of mailing lists which are useful to be involved in. I actually get a lot of good ideas from some of those emails that come from the users group. The Distinguished Engineer Program, is that going or is it dead?
Not at the moment, but we're hoping to bring it back.
So this was an opportunity for engineers to nominate themselves or be nominated to be awarded a Distinguished Engineer Program and then be invited to the TNC conference in Europe. I think we've had two folk, Raj and the guy from Malaysia, Farhan from Malaysia, have both been awarded that particular distinguished thing. They had to do a small presentation on what they're doing at TNC, so it's a great opportunity if you can participate in that. Other opportunities, get involved and ask questions. Investigate commercial offerings, because there's a lot of commercial stuff out there, and take time to experiment and share your results. I've spoken to that. And I will be putting out some sort of questionnaire or survey or something about what you want from future APAN identity and access meetings and what we want to achieve in these meetings. So let's get out and discuss and talk and collaborate and communicate and do all those great things. So that brings us up to morning tea, I believe. Thanks for everyone for listening, and thanks to Nicole and Casper for their presentations this morning. And if we could all stand up and walk towards the car so if we can get a group photo.